So our next speaker today is going to be Pastor Roy Tinklenberg. So Pastor Roy Tinklenberg is a founder and CEO of the Faith and Work Movement Global, which is a ministry that helps Christians bring their best selves to work. He's been referred to as the pastor to Silicon Valley by leaders of workplace fellowships throughout the Bay Area. He helps Christians to create workplace fellowships. He coaches workplace fellowship leaders and helps to connect Christ followers from different workplaces into city networks to help catalyze renewal in their cities and workplaces. The vision is to positively impact the companies that impact the world. Today, Pastor Roy oversees a global network of over 100 workplace fellowships in more than 10 tech hub cities around the world. Today, Roy will be presenting on the topic of You Are God's Fine China, living up to the potential of your calling as Christians in the marketplace. With that, I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to Roy Tinklenberg. Thank you for being with us today, Roy.
Hey, Jason, good to be with you. Good to see you. And thank you, Passion Talks, for the opportunity to come and to be one of the speakers today. As Jason mentioned, my name is Roy, and I am a follower of Jesus. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a pastor of a missional community called Compass, and the co-founder and catalyst of Faith and Work Movement Global. And today is really an exciting day for me. And the reason why this is an exciting day for me is because today actually marks an anniversary. This is the 7th anniversary of the ministry that I've been doing as a pastor, coming alongside of people in the workplace, a ministry that grew to become this ministry that we call Faith and Work Movement Global. It was on 8/13/2014 that I went to connect with some Christians in a small city called Mountain View with a big company called Google. And I connected with these believers, and they invited me to come and have breakfast with them, to share a few thoughts with them, to pray with them. And we started to look at what faith and work was all about. And for me, that was the beginning of a conversion experience. And when I say that it was a conversion experience, what I want to say is that it was a paradigm shift. And I think that prior to coming and connecting with these guys and seeing how valuable their work was, I had bought into a misunderstanding, in a sense, a false theology of work. And the theology of work that I had bought into was this, that if you really wanted to be useful to God and useful to the kingdom and beneficial to humanity, you should cast off your nets, sell your boats, and go become fishers of men instead of fishermen. And certainly Jesus did call his disciples to do exactly that, to leave their work behind in order to do a different type of work. And so that caused me to think that the highest calling for anyone who wanted to use their vocation in a way that would honor God was to become a missionary. And if you didn't quite have the courage to become a missionary, then be a campus minister or a pastor or something like that. And if you didn't feel called to this religious kind of vocation, then do something that would clearly be in service of humanity, like a nurse or a teacher. And then if you keep going down this staircase of vocations, you'll get to the very bottom where, you're a scummy lawyer or a greedy businessman or something like that. And I just thought that there was this kind of staircase of jobs and vocations. And I felt that if I really wanted to be useful to God, if I really wanted to let my life count and the things that I do count, that I needed to choose a vocation that would focus primarily on the work of the kingdom. And I began to understand after this kind of conversion experience that, and a conversion experience always involves a confession. And this is basically what I'm saying to you right now, is that I'm confessing that even though I had a theology that had taught me that as there should be no disparity between clergy and laity, to use very churchy terms. People who get their paychecks, clergy, people who get their paychecks from places like ministries and churches and mission organizations and Christian servants organizations, and people who get their paychecks from companies like Facebook or Google or Salesforce or Cisco or Safeway or Starbucks or wherever it is that you get your paycheck. And I had this misunderstanding that these people who got their paychecks from ministries worked for God, and these people who got their paychecks from what we call secular organizations worked for themselves or for money or for greed or worked for man, but they weren't working for God. And when I looked deeper into the scriptures, I saw that actually God was telling even the most, even the people with the lowest job on the totem pole of social status. You know, there are certain jobs that do give you kind of feel good about having that job and you can kind of take pride in it. And there's certain jobs that will be viewed upon by others as menial jobs. And we shouldn't view them as menial jobs, but they are looked upon as if they are somehow menial. And Paul spoke to the church about this. Paul is an apostle, a early convert to Christianity, and he wasn't always friendly to Christianity. In fact, he was quite hostile to Christianity. He hated Christians. He's known and referred to in scripture as somebody who went around from house to house and dragged people out of their houses and imprisoned them. But he had this conversion experience when he encountered Jesus. And when he encountered Jesus, the scales fell off his eyes and he began to see things differently. And Paul then later becomes one of the chief leaders and church planters of this early church movement. And he's talking about work, and he's saying that to the worker, the indentured servant who's working, that they should work hard and they should realize that they are working for the Lord and not for man. And so I had a very unbiblical understanding of work. I was thinking that I was working for the Lord and other people were working for man. And with that came a false sense of pride. Now, I wouldn't have said this to anyone. I wouldn't have had admitted this out loud like I am right now, but I'm admitting it out loud because this is a confession. I thought that somehow what I did was more valuable than what other people did because I was working for God and they were working for Google or whatever, right? And that it was somehow of greater value. And another passage that speaks to me about this, ironically, is a passage where Paul is writing a letter to a pastor, to one of his disciples, Timothy, who he refers to as a son in the faith. And he's writing a letter, the second epistle to Timothy. And I understand that these are pastoral epistles. So the primary contextual application is for pastors to learn how to do their job as pastors. But there's a transference in what these principles teach Timothy that are valuable for us as well. And so I want to look at them And I want to just see how these passages might apply to us. And the first thing that I want to do is actually read a little bit of the scripture. And I don't want this to feel like church. This is Passion Talks, but I want you to just get the context from which I am drawing these points. And so Paul says this, now in a great house, there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honorable use, some for dishonorable. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from what is dishonorable, he will be a vessel for honorable use, set apart as holy, useful to the master for every good work. And there's two words that I want to emphasize in this passage that I just quoted, and that is, if anyone, not just pastors, not just missionaries, not just Christian school teachers or YMCA workers in the Young Men's Christian Association who are trying to serve people, or people who are working in the Salvation Army trying to help people. No, not just people who are working and getting paychecks from some kind of a Christian organization, but anyone. And these principles apply to every good work, every kind of work. And so he uses this illustration about a household and how there are certain vessels. And the goal then is that you would become a vessel that is useful to the master for honorable work. Now, if you came to my house and I were going to serve you coffee, I might serve you coffee in this cup because it's like one of the prettier cups that we have in our house. I probably wouldn't serve you coffee in this cup because this is kind of like a cup that's a common cup that gets thrown into the back of the cupboard, although I use it all the time, right? But it's not necessarily for guests. It's for me. I also drink water out of my water bottle a lot, but I probably wouldn't be offering you this water bottle because you might go, wait a minute, I mean, did he just sip out of that? Or maybe I would offer you water out of a water goblet, because you're an honored guest. And so there's certain types of things that are useful and honorable. And then I certainly would not offer you water out of this. Here's Remy's dog bowl. Now he drinks water out of this, but I don't think you would want to drink water out of this. And there, so you get this imagery that is being used here. And the goal then is to somehow go from being maybe this useful, but maybe not so valuable or honorable, to the water goblet. How do we do that? Well, according to the passage, there are some keys to doing that, and I want to quickly jump into those and cover those. And the first one is we want to stay on the high road. If you want to be a worker that is going to be doing honorable work in honorable ways, you want to stay on the high road. Now, the biblical admonition is, so flee youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord with a pure heart. And you might say, well, how important is staying on the high road to actually being successful in business? And you could cite a number of business people that are successful, and they do not seem to be moral. They do not seem to be concerned for others. There's a certain former CEO from a city that I just visited. I was just in Seattle connecting with workplace fellowship leaders, and he took off and went into space. And when he went off into space, there were people back here on Earth signing a petition saying, let's not let him come back to Earth. And that's because they didn't really see the CEO as being a person who is necessarily good and beneficial to all of us. And they're jealous of of his wealth, or they feel like he's misusing his wealth and his influence, or he's doing things that are detrimental to certain classes of people or to certain parts of our climate. And so Proverbs 11 verse 10 says this, that when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. And if we're going to stay on the high roads and we prosper, then people around us should be happy that we're doing well and we're prospering. The second thing that I want to say is, another way is to stay out on the high roads. The second way is to keep out of controversies. Stay out of controversies. Now, Paul's admonition to Timothy is have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. You know that they breed quarrels. And he says again, charge them before God not to quarrel about words, which does no good, but only ruins the hearers. This is especially a word to Christians in the marketplace. Avoid controversies. Avoid entering into politics and things like that that are going to divide your workplace, your team. And then the third and final thing that I want to say is lead gently, but lead anyway. See, not everybody is going to like the direction that you lead, and not everybody's going to like you when you lead. And if you want people to like you, don't be a leader, sell ice cream. The Lord's servant, according to this scripture, says, must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone. If you want to be in the workplace, if you want to become an honorable, useful contributor in the workplace, then be kind to everyone. Be able to teach, patiently endure the wrongs that are happening around you, and recognize that you might have opponents, but when you have opponents, respond to those opponents with gentleness, not with forcefulness. And so these are the three things that I would just encourage you to do so that you can be the best contributor to your workplace, and that you can become an honorable vessel that is useful to the master in the place where you work. We want to encourage Christians to bring their full self and their best self to work, and to, as Al said, represent Christ well in the workplace. God bless you.
Thank you, Roy. That was incredibly helpful. And thank you again for sharing your story of how you came to your understanding of faith and work so openly. That was a lot of really amazing advice. So thank you for taking time to share today with us. Okay, and again, we'll have the Q&A at the end, so we'll have more opportunity to ask Roy some questions and learn a little bit more from him as well.